Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're continuing on our Oscar category breakdown series, where we just go through each of the different categories of the Oscars and, kind of break them down and look at, what's going on inside the race within each of these categories. For today's category breakdown video, we're looking at the Best Supporting Actress category. So if you haven't seen any of the previous videos in this series on the channel, there's a playlist with all of them on the side there. But also, if you haven't seen it, just kind of a little introduction, a little crash course, real quick of what this category, what these videos are like. Is I'm going to go through each of the nominees in this category. I'm going to say the nominee, talk about a little bit some facts about them and about the film that they're nominated for, and then at the end I'm going to give my personal ranking for each of the nominees, and then my prediction for how I think they'll fare at the Academy Awards on March 10th. And then just one quick little note before we get into the nominees, doing my research, I've discovered that through these five nominees, they combine for 9 Oscar nominations, and but 4 of the members in this category are first-time nominees, and then there's one actress that has 5 nominations to make the 9. So just thought it was interesting, and most likely that means we're going to have a first-time Oscar winner here in this category. So without further ado, let's take a look at the nominees. The first nominee that we're taking a look at is Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer. This is Emily Blunt's first Oscar nomination. She was nominated at the British Academy Film Awards in 2007 for The Devil Wears Prada and in 2017 for The Girl on the Train. At the Screen Actors Guild Awards in 2017, she was nominated for both Mary Poppins Returns as well as The Girl on the Train. 2 years later, she won at the SAG Awards for A Quiet Place. Now, Emily Blunt in her role in Oppenheimer kind of had an interesting journey kind of getting here, and I think a lot as we're gonna look at this category. I do think that there's a chance that this was maybe kind of the supporting actress race was a little bit weaker this year than it has been in some years past, and so I think it was one of those things where a lot of the actresses in this category, there were so many times where you kept thinking like, oh, maybe they're gonna fall out, like maybe this isn't really the performance that they're getting nominated for, and then ultimately it just didn't seem like there was a lot of other alternatives, and so in kind of a weird fashion that I think just because of how strong the film that Emily Blunt is being nominated for, I think that ultimately kind of helped. And not to say any, to take away anything from Emily Blunt's performance. I think it was a great performance in Oppenheimer, but it was one of those that I remember the discourse at the time after the film came out was a lot of people were like, oh, she didn't have as big of a role as we thought she was going to have. And then there was a lot of, complaints or discussion about Nolan not being able to write his female characters. And so there was, I remember hearing a lot of that discourse at the time when Oppenheimer was released. And so I think a lot of people back then didn't really think that Emily Blunt was going to get in. I think a lot of people thought there was going to be a lot of other films, different actresses were going to come through and other performances, and it was just going to kind of push Emily Blunt down. But again, I think it's kind of the opposite, where I think Emily Blunt ultimately kind of ended up being one of the top 2 or 3 in this category of like getting in everywhere and really being secure in her nomination. And I'm glad she got in. I'm glad that she got this nomination because her performance, while one thing that I think a lot of people always look for in acting performances is they look for who has the Oscar clip, who has that moment, that the scene that you can cut, and that's the scene they play at the Oscars to show how good of an actress you are. And while Emily Blunt does, there is 100% in the third act. Emily Blunt starts getting a lot more of those type of scenes, where she gets more of the kind of the showier, the flashier acting. And for her, it's kind of interesting because her Oscar clips aren't necessarily the screaming and yelling. She gets a couple scenes with Jason Clarke, with his character, and then a scene with Benny Safdie's character, kind of at the end of the film. And those 2 scenes are very kind of more laid back, reserved type acting, especially the one with the Safdie brother at the end. It's very like stoic. But then the scene with Jason Clarke, it's kind of more, that's probably the clip they'll use because it's her kind of getting to show off kind of a beautiful mix of her being stern as well as her being, kind of comedic, giving some comedic timing in there. So obviously those are kind of the scenes that at the end that I think a lot of people remember. But she has a lot of great scenes, kind of in the first 2 hours where she is being, the wife of Oppenheimer, and kind of there isn't as much kind of the lovey-dovey romance side of their relationship. It is very kind of strict and very, kind of just this is what they were. And so there was kind of more, you can't really talk about the ups and downs really of the relationship. It was kind of just more of the stress and the frustrations that they had. So it's kind of more of the downs, but she does a great job of playing that very well. And then she has a scene, probably one of my favorite scenes of hers in the movie is when she's consoling Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer about something. And again, don't really want to get into too many spoilers for those who haven't seen the film still. But she's consoling him about something, and she kind of, it goes in a different way than you really expect a scene where a character is a wife is emotionally trying to console a husband. And so I think that was the scene that stood out for me. And so Emily Blunt's performance is a little bit more reserved than like I think a lot of people were expecting, but ultimately for me and for clearly the members of the Academy that still voted for her, it was still a great performance and they still enjoyed. So on my personal ranking, I'm putting Emily Blunt in third, and then in my prediction, I'm putting her as the runner-up. The next nominee that we are taking a look at is Danielle Brooks in The Color Purple. This is Danielle Brooks' first Oscar nomination. In addition to the Oscars, Brooks was also nominated at the BAFTAs, SAGs, Critics' Choice Award, and Golden Globes this year for her role as Sophia. Brooks has now been nominated in all four EGOT categories, but her only win at the four shows so far is for Best Musical Theater Album for the Color Purple Broadway show in 2017. Now, Danielle Brooks' performance to me is interesting in the sense that, I saw The Color Purple in theaters a couple months back, and when I was watching it, I like obviously Danielle Brooks stood out. Obviously her performance stood out, and and I recognized that it was a good solid performance. But the first time I watched it, it was one of those where The Color Purple is such a true ensemble piece where everyone's kind of coming in and providing different things and really kind of bringing energy to the film. And so I think on my first viewing, I think maybe Danielle Brooks' performance got lost a little bit in that, where I thought, oh, so many different people here are all Fantasia here, and Taraji P. Henson and Coleman Domingo here, and then even you got Halle Bailey at the beginning, and it's just you've got different actresses and actors that they're all delivering, they're all giving great performances. And so I think for me, I kind of Danielle Brooks has just kind of got put into the bag, and I just kind of was like, it's there, it's nice. But on my rewatch a couple days ago, I'm glad I got that rewatch in before making this list, because there's something about her performance that just stood out even more on the second go around. She really ended up on my second watch. She truly ended up being kind of the standout performance, the showiest, because I think for me in The Color Purple, there's kind of up and downs for a lot of different people, but I think other than maybe the main character with Fantasia Barrino, besides her character, Danielle Brooks' character is the only other one that gets just like a very wide range of emotions. She's, when you first meet her, she's kind of at the top of the mountain. She's, the highest of highs. And then obviously as the film goes on, some things are happening to her and you can see kind of her coming down a little bit. And then obviously there's the big, kind of tragic event of the film that all of a sudden puts her at like the lowest place that you see her in the film. And for me in that second watch, I really truly appreciated the performance of being able to sell the very vocal, the very loud, the very confident woman that she is kind of at the beginning of the film, to her character kind of being broken down at the end, and then seeing her kind of build back up the last 20, 30-ish minutes of the film. And so I was really impressed with the wide range that Danielle Brooks gives. She's, again, it's a very confident character, a very charismatic character, so she brings a lot of that energy that's really a breath of fresh air, if you will, just a very exciting performance in the first half. And not to mention obviously that she's got the musical number that she has. I should have I should have looked this up or tried to remember before recording. I want to say this song is called Hell No. So she has her own, kind of musical number that is one of the catchier, one of the better, more upbeat and fun, songs that, is in at the beginning of the film. I think it's maybe like the fifth or sixth song that comes in the film. But it's very catchy, very great performance in the musical aspect. And again, yeah, for me, it's just with Danielle Brooks, it was just the wide range of situations that her character's in, the varying degrees that she plays, and you believe it all just as well. You believe the very believe the confident, the very happy, the very energetic performance at the beginning, and then you feel the rock bottom, the devastated, just broken down performance that she gives kind of later in the film. So for me, that's the reason that Danielle Brooks' performance stood out with to me so much more on the second watch, and I loved The Color Purple as a film. I think so much more on the second watch, and I think a lot of that is due to Danielle Brooks' performance. So my personal ranking for Danielle Brooks, I'm going to put her in second, but for my prediction, I'm going to put her down in fourth. The next nominee that we are taking a look at is America Ferrera in Barbie. This is America Ferrera's first Oscar nomination. She was also nominated at the Screen Actors Guild Awards and the Critics' Choice Awards this year for her role as Gloria. It was recently announced that Ferrera's next project would be directing an adaptation of the bestseller I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. And so America Ferrera, I think, is kind of the one performance this year in this category that was maybe the biggest surprise, I think, on Oscar nomination morning. This category kind of seemed like it had three people that were set, and then it was kind of a bag of six people or so that you could have put any two of those in for the last two slots. Ultimately, America Ferrera is the one that kind of jumps in, swoops in toward, gets the momentum at the end, and kind of swoops in and gets this nomination. And again, you talk about Oscar clips. You talk about what they when they're announcing the nominees at the ceremony, if they do if they attach a clip of their performance to kind of show people there, like, or show the audience, at home, kind of, what the gist of their performance, what their performance was like, if they do show the clips this year, I think we all know where America Ferrera's clip is going to come from Barbie. She obviously has an excellent monologue, a great monologue, in the kind of the resolution of the third act of the film, and it is a great monologue. I do think it's kind of unfortunate that I think her performance has been kind of reduced to just that monologue, and that's all that I think a lot of people are, saying, well, oh, she only got nominated because of the monologue. And maybe that's true. Maybe if she didn't have the monologue, maybe she wouldn't have got nominated. You can't get into the minds of the voters. But that doesn't mean that that's all her performance was. Her performance wasn't just that monologue. She kind of is a character that comes in, not, I mean, obviously a little bit before midway through the movie. She's not there for a little bit, but when she comes, she brings a whole new kind of dynamic to the film, and in her relationship with Margot Robbie's, stereotypical Barbie, as well as her relationship with her daughter in the film. Kind of two, almost one and the same, kind of like the same loving parental, supportive relationship, but obviously two very drastic different people that she's having these relationships with. And so I think that throughout the film you're kind of getting this kind of the subtle mother performance that she's giving there, and again, a lot of what she's doing is very impressive, up until like the big monologue scene. And so again, obviously that is kind of probably how she got the nomination, but it's not all her performance was. And I remember really enjoying a lot of kind of just the beauty and just the loving performance that America Ferrera was giving in my first watch of Barbie, many months ago. And so I'm very excited in the next, I think it might be today or tomorrow, within the next couple of days, I'm going to get around to rewatching Barbie as part of my, going through rewatching every single thing that was nominated for an Academy Award. So I'm getting close to getting Barbie another rewatch, and I'm really excited for that second rewatch of Barbie to just kind of really watch America Ferrera's performance a lot closer, because I remember it being so much more than just the monologue. I remember it being this mother and this, I guess, kind of loving friend relationship with Margot Robbie's Barbie. But I just remember there being so much more to America Ferrera's performance than just the monologue, and I'm very excited to get another rewatch in and to be able to, kind of confirm that to myself and remember, a lot more about how strong her performance is in Barbie. So my personal ranking for America Ferrera, I'm putting her in fourth. For my prediction, I'm going to put her in fifth. This is the performance I have the hardest time seeing win. The next nominee that we are taking a look at is Jodie Foster in Nyad. This is Jodie Foster's fifth nomination. Her first nomination was in 1977 when she was 14 years old for Taxi Driver. She then won in 1989 for The Accused and in 1992 for The Silence of the Lambs. Her most recent nomination was back in 1995 for Nell. In addition to Nyad, Jodie Foster has had a big 2023 starring in True Detective Night Country. And so I talked about last category with America Ferrera, how there was kind of three nominees in this category that were kind of locked up, and then there was two kind of open slots. So Jodie Foster ended up kind of getting one of those other two open slots. Although I think the signs were kind of moving towards Jodie Foster to the point that I think a lot of people ended up kind of predicting her, but she still kind of swoops in there and gets that nomination. And there's a lot of discussion about Nyad and about the film and how a lot of people didn't really enjoy it. Obviously, there's a lot of people that thoroughly enjoyed it. There's people kind of on both sides. This is kind of one of those films that it didn't necessarily have a lot of kind of just like and kind of middle ground, support for it. It was very much, a lot of people really loved it, a lot of people really hated it. I kind of find myself more kind of in the middle on it. It isn't, my favorite of all the nominees, that got any Oscar nominations, but ultimately I don't hate the film or despise the film like I feel like a lot of people did. And in Nyad, on my first watch, I guess this was 4-ish months ago or so now, probably on the first watch, but in that first watch, I remember there was, I think going in, there was more buzz about Annette Bening kind of playing the lead character. And so I kind of went in just really expecting Annette Bening to be the performance that kind of blew me away. But ultimately, I think I preferred Jodie Foster's performance a lot more in the film. She's kind of the more grounded friend character that, she kind of gets more of the emotions. Annette Bening, her character is very intense and very competitive, and Jodie Foster's character is the one that's kind of having to just deal with that and having to, accept her friend's, competitiveness and her intensity, and her stubbornness, and still being able to love and care for her the same way. And so obviously throughout the film, you get these scenes where Jodie Foster, where she's kind of being pushed a little bit to the limits of how much she can love and how much she can continue to encourage and to engage with this behavior that Annette Bening's Diana Nyad is portraying. And so I think Jodie Foster, it's this very kind of beautiful friend performance that it truly is kind of the supporting performance that I think elevates you and helps you turn around, because just of how kind of competitive and intense and just so laser focused on what she's doing and just kind of stubborn, it would make it kind of easy to just really not like Diana Nyad's character, or Annette Bening playing Diana Nyad, to not like her character. But Jodie Foster, just kind of the loving, the nurturing friend character that she plays, is really able to kind of get you to love and to accept Nyad more than you would otherwise. And so ultimately, I think with Jodie Foster, she has a lot of scenes. She doesn't really necessarily have any yelling or kind of breakout scenes, but she does have numerous scenes that could make for great Oscar clips. And so again, I didn't necessarily enjoy the film as much as others, but I still did thoroughly enjoy Jodie Foster's performance in Nyad. My personal ranking of Jodie Foster, I am putting her in fifth, but for my prediction, I'm going to put her in third. And the final nominee that we're taking a look at is Da'Vine Joy Randolph in The Holdovers. This is Da'Vine Joy Randolph's first Oscar nomination. She has already won the BAFTA, the SAG Award, the Critics' Choice Award, and the Golden Globe this year for her role as Mary Lamb. Randolph has had roles in other Academy Award nominated films: Rustin in 2023, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in 2022, and The United States vs. Billie Holiday in 2021. And so obviously, if you were kind of paying attention to the graphic, when I put up my personal and prediction rankings, obviously you can kind of see where this is going with Da'Vine Joy Randolph and the Holdovers. You can see how I feel about her performance, and you can see how pretty much everyone has felt about her performance. All of the precursors as well as critics groups, Da'Vine Joy Randolph has won pretty much everything. She has swept all of the precursors as well as, yeah, those critics groups. She has just had a very successful, very phenomenal Oscar season, and it is for a great performance. It's interesting that it's not necessarily the flashiest, or in other years it's very likely that she could have just kind of been. I mean, I think she would have gotten nominated in a lot of other years, but I think it's very possible that she could have fallen to kind of a more flashy or a more, exciting, if you will, performance in this category. But again, I think this kind of comes back to a little bit, the perception of maybe this is a weaker category than it's been in other years. And so I think for that reason, Da'Vine Joy Randolph being such a great performance, being such a solid, uh, a great nomination, or a great performance that we focused really hard on getting nominated. And as soon as it did, I think because of the love that a lot of people have for it and a lot of people have for the film, it suddenly it clinched the Oscars so early in the race, and has not faltered anywhere. In any of the precursors, any critics groups, it's Da'Vine Joy Randolph is winning everything. And so this would be for me, on March 10th. This would probably be the biggest lock of the night, and would be the if Da'Vine Joy Randolph doesn't win the Oscar, would be the biggest shock, I think, in who knows how long at the Oscars. It's that done of a deal. And so when we look at the performance for Da'Vine Joy Randolph, her role as Mary in The Holdovers, it's another one of those that is a very kind of more subtle, a more just kind of more reserved performance. She doesn't get, I'm trying to. It's been a couple months since I've seen The Holdovers. I don't think I really remember any kind of big yelling. She doesn't get any of these big outburst scenes. For her, it's her character dealing with the loss of her son. You can, from scene one of her in the film, you can kind of see that she's a little bit more broken down, a little bit more in a tougher, I guess, kind of mental state than other characters. And so we understand that she's got a lot going on in her life, and it's kind of weighing her down a little bit. And so she just kind of gives, especially while they're at the school, she gives a lot more kind of a subtle, nuanced performance. And I guess I think I kind of am remembering one scene where she's kind of interacting with people that aren't, Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessa. But, for the most part, she's just it's just this more laid back, reserved, nuanced performance. And then kind of I guess I don't want to necessarily say the second half of the film, but I guess maybe just the second act of the film, when she's kind of spending more time with Dominic Sessa and with Paul Giamatti's characters. When the three of them are together, she kind of you're getting more scenes of her opening up. There's a scene with her and Paul Giamatti where they're watching TV in the break room, and in that scene you're kind of getting her opening up a little bit more, and then she kind of is a little bit more expressive and a little more upbeat, I guess, kind of as the three of them are kind of spending time together. But then ultimately the scene that I think could very well be her Oscar clip, and it's the scene that I think a lot of people talk about when they talk about her performance, is a scene in which I don't think she has any lines. Maybe kind of before or after she kind of has a couple lines, but for the specific moment that a lot of people are talking about, it's when she's in the room and she's looking at, again, I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't seen the film yet, but she's looking at something in the room, and it's kind of a quiet, very intimate, beautiful moment that I'm glad, that Alexander Payne was able to make time for this scene in the film, because again, that is kind of the scene that really kind of grounds her character and makes you feel, I think, the most emotion in the film. It is just this small kind of moment of kind of heartbreak, but it's kind of this beautiful heartbreak, and it's just it's the scene is done very well, and it's very emotional to the point that it really kind of sticks with you as kind of like the scene. And the reason I know it's kind of the scene for her in the film is it's a lot of, when I see people on Twitter when they're talking about the performance, or any of the aggregate like pages on Twitter when they're posting, oh, Divine Joy Randolph has won this award, or she's won this, or whatever, and they post a still from the film. It's oftentimes it's this still. It's the still of her kind of looking down, looking at something. And so I just that scene alone, I think it was just kind of in very few words, if any words, was just a beautiful piece of acting. And so I'm glad that Divine Joy Randolph was able to kind of get in here, get into the Academy, and get a nomination at the Academy Awards. And for me, I really loved this performance, because I hadn't necessarily, Divine Joy Randolph hasn't necessarily had a lot of leading roles, hasn't, kind of had the big acting roles, and so with this nomination, she's gonna get more of those in the future. But there hasn't been a lot of films that I necessarily had seen. I guess I've seen a little bit here and there of Divine Joy Randolph, but I wasn't the biggest fan really coming into the Holdovers. I didn't really like her performance in a couple other films I'd seen, and so for me, I'm just really glad to have seen this performance, to see how good of an actor she really is, and to see the type of performances she can deliver, when given the opportunities. And so I hope that with this nomination and with this eventual Oscar win, I'm hoping that Divine Joy Randolph is going to continue to just get plenty more work, a lot more opportunities, because she is an actress that I'm very excited to kind of continue to watch now that I've kind of been opened up and seeing how good of an actress she really is. So my personal ranking for Da'Vine Joy Randolph is first, and I am predicting her to win the Oscar. And that's it. Those are the nominees for Best Supporting Actress. Let me know down below in the comments who you're rooting for, and let me know down there as well, who you think is going to win, as well as who you think could have gotten into this category that maybe didn't. Maybe you were rooting for, a Rosamund Pike, or maybe you were rooting for Julianne Moore in May December. So just let me know down below, who you wanted to see in this category that ultimately didn't. For me personally, the biggest one that I think 100% should have been in this category that didn't get in was Rachel McAdams. For all you there, God, it's me, Margaret. But yes, let me know any snubs in this category that you would have liked to see get in here, and then also, while you're down in the comments, let me know what videos you want to see me, what categories you want to see me do breakdown videos for next. So thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.